Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can read about the greatest stories in all of the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing this show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines in entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. Oh, yeah. Man, it's been a week of ups and downs.
True story.
Yeah. I had to rush from TaioCon, go to the day job, and then I had to go to Anime Los Angeles the following weekend.
Wow.
Wow.
Downtime.
Not as much as you would think. I mean, I spent all of Saturday, and I mean all of Saturday, in the hotel suite that we rented as a group. Mm-hmm. And I made myself some slow cooker chuck roast, like peppercini chuck roast, that was just so pull apart. I put it in hoagie rolls, and I sat down and watched like the playoff games that day. You know, and there were several people who were just like, "So, what are you doing on Saturday? You doing anything cool at the convention?" No. Then why do you look so happy? Because I'm going to sit down and watch football games with chuck roast hoagies, and I also bought chips and onion dip, and I'm just going to sit there and watch games go. Where are you doing this, and what time is it? It's like, what the hell? Get off my cloud.
That was the response I was expecting.
I had way too many people curious about where exactly I was going to enact this weird plan. It was even weirder because the recipe is very simple. It just requires like a jar of pepperoni, some sliced or chopped garlic, and a chuck roast to start out with. And then all you need is the hoagie rolls and the provolone cheese. So I started this at like 8 in the morning. And, you know, by midday we were having a couple of guests who would stop by and they just opened the door and it's just like, "Hey, what are you doing in here?"
Cooking.
It just made everybody curious. One of my roommates left in the middle of the day to do some stuff. He came back after the first game was over, and he just said, "So, Jeremy, did you finish the..." "Oh, gosh, yes, you did." So, it was just kind of funny. But the recipe went over well. The few people that tried it are just like, "This is great. What's in it?" 3 things. No! How about you guys? How you doing?
Doing okay. It's been a week.
Okay. That's pretty descriptive. How about you, Jesse?
And the same old crap.
Okay. I wish I could do something that mundane. I'm still debating whether or not I want to go to a bar wrestling show that has a lot of independent pro wrestlers coming to it. Like really notable people like Brian Cage and Taya Valkyrie and Chris Bay and, you know, supposedly Rich Swann, but he had an injury recently, so I hope he'll be able to make it. I don't know. I know. It's my hobby. I know you guys aren't hip to it, but it's just something I enjoy, and I haven't seen some of these people live. So, that's how I hope to spend next Thursday anyway. We're going to start with Marvel comic news, and this involves the characters that are probably pretty well known right now thanks to Disney, its various movies, and everything it's bought since then. The first story actually has to do with a resurrection in comics, which is one of those things where I'm sure long-term comic fans groan and new ones just go, "Wait, this happens?" Happens quite a bit. Death is more of a story gimmick than an actual problem these days. Just ask the X-Men. However, a Spider-Man villain that has been seen since approximately the 80s has been brought back to life. Either of you been reading Amazing Spider-Man at all?
No.
Nope.
There's this relatively new entity called the Kindred running around. It looks desiccated. It has this giant millipede wrapped around it. It's also responsible for the recent resurrection of Mysterio, without much explanation. Whoever this is, though, not only does it have some kind of very personal beef with Spider-Man, it actually knows that Spider-Man and Peter Parker are the same person.
Ooh.
Kindred is also very well aware of Norman Osborn and his various iterations. This is very personal. I'd almost swear it was Harry Osborn if I didn't know any better. Except, why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man, I believe it was number 37, yep, it just came out this past week, Kindred just resurrected a classic Spider-Man villain called the Sin Eater. Now, the Sin Eater, at least the original one, was I believe a former FBI man who became an NYPD detective. And he dressed superbly simply. We're talking like purple shirt, purple pants, green mask, and gloves. Except he was also responsible for one of the most notable events in Spider-Man's history, the death of Captain Jean DeWolf. I don't know how exactly she became the casualty because I've never read this particular storyline. But this is one of those moments that made Peter Parker change how he did particular things. As a matter of fact, after Captain DeWolf died and Spider-Man knew who was responsible, he spent a long part of this storyline deciding whether or not he was going to murder the Sin Eater for what he did.
Wow.
It's one of those storylines that push Parker extremely close to his limits. And the original Sin Eater didn't just run afoul of Spider-Man. He was also able to kill a judge named Horace Rosenthal in the comics, who was a personal friend of a lawyer named Matt Murdock.
Oh.
So, yeah, that brought the Daredevil in on everything. So, how this character is resurrecting people, I do not know. Why everything is so personal with Peter Parker, I don't know. But this is one of those characters where it's kind of like Bucky Barnes or Jean Grey. You expect them to come back, except they've come back in the weirdest, most unexpected way. So I wonder how Parker's going to respond to this character being back around. I mean, he's grown a lot since the days of the Sin Eater. This may not be as complicated as I like to think it is. He's also had several people look up to him since then, so everything's more questionable. A Marvel series is having a DC-style problem. It's been postponed 3 weeks.
Which one?
Well, it's a special edition of Captain America: The End. The first issue's been postponed by Marvel. They haven't given a reason for the schedule change. Eric Larson tweeted that he finished work on this one-shot issue back on January 6th. When Marvel does these The End one-shots, what they typically do is some kind of projected future of the character where they end up usually fighting to their end. The solicit for this one reads, quote, Steve Rogers fights for survival in a post-apocalyptic wasteland populated by hordes of Red Skulls. Legendary writer and artist Eric Larson returns to Marvel for an oversized last tale of Simon and Kirby's American Hero, unquote. So I guess that's kind of a take it or leave it type thing. I kind of like the potential futures that are actually on the timeline, but the end things always kind of exist in their own bubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say they're bad stories. They're just not things I sought out since it doesn't exactly count to the timeline of the character. It's more like a fun what-if type thing.
Yeah.
Right.
We also have new details regarding the Outlawed one-shot. This is coming out in March, where any superhero over the age or under the age of 21 in Marvel Comics is illegal at this point.
What?
Well, there's going to be some kind of event where lives are lost. It's the beginning of this sounds very similar to the original Civil War in Marvel Comics, except this one has to do specifically with young heroes. In the incoming one-shot that was released in December about a cosmic-level murder mystery, there was already a senator who is lobbying for young heroes to be outlawed because he doesn't feel that they have the emotional responsibility to take on what they've taken on. Which is one of those arguments that could be salient, except you already have a number of young people who are doing this and have done this in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So this is going to get highly personal because of teasers, we found out what the name of this law is going to be. They're calling it Kamala's Law.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, Kamala Khan is the real name of the current Miss Marvel, which indicates that at some point she is going to be unmasked. And I was trying to figure out what was going on because I didn't know if this was a case where Kamala actually agreed with the law and therefore was one of its authors. I've been asking myself this for the past week. However, subsequent news stories have kind of blown that apart, because spinning out of the Outlawed one-shot will be a new Champion series with art by Simone De Mayo, and the writer will be Eve Ewing. And this is being stylized as Kamala Khan, Miles Morales Spider-Man, and Sam Alexander, the young Nova, as the core of a new group of young heroes who are out against this law. And it's going to pick up several characters who come and go from the series, which include the Red Locust, the current Patriot, Ironheart, Nadia Van Dyne, the Unstoppable Wasp. There's going to be a bunch of characters bouncing in and out of this series depending on the situation and where they land. Actually, it involves one of the members of Power Pack, too.
Interesting.
And Dust from the Young X-Men. And Squirrel Girl. I thought Squirrel Girl was in her early 20s, but maybe she comes in underneath this.
Don't know.
Well, the new task force that's supposed to keep teen vigilantes from getting out of control, it has the acronym of CRADLE, which sounds evil.
Yeah.
But there is also, according to the solicits, a spy within the champions. I'm not sure which one that could potentially be. There's a number of characters who it could potentially be. So, any opinions on this? Because I'm almost intrigued by this idea of young Marvel turning into a... I almost said radical group, but that's not the right phrase. Just complete rebels.
I think the whole content's already been done in some fashion. Although I would like to read these characters in the meantime.
Well, it's been done in terms of Civil War, but it hasn't been done with the idea of youth, which has turned into a pretty big theme in the current social climate of at least America. I mean, we've come up with a new derogatory word just to describe people within a certain age group for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of which, there is some truth to Eve Ewing's writing when she said that we expect a lot out of teenagers in this country, and yet at the same time, we don't expect anything from them. It's a weird contradiction that can really confuse people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we expect them to be responsible idiots at some point, it seems like. So I'm curious to read this only because that's a lot of power, and several of these characters have been former Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of former Avengers who have turned their lives around, another spin-off is coming out of Outlawed because as much as there are teens who just want to be heroes and change the world, there has to be someone responsible for training them and showing them what it takes to be modern superheroes. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Well, the original New Warriors are regathering to be those teachers.
Ooh.
Really?
Night Thrasher, Firestar, Silhouette, Rage, Speedball, and Namorita are reforming the New Warriors.
I guess they have some sort of insight they can impart.
They have major insight. Back in the 90s when this team came together, they were pretty much the Marvel version of the Teen Titans. These were the young guys who, for the most part, wanted to be Avengers.
Mm.
The only one not currently on this squad from the originals is Nova. Richard Rider, the original Nova. He's still currently doing very big cosmic levels things in space. Oh, it's going to be written by Daniel Kibblesmith. The art's going to be by Luciano Vecchio. According to, I believe, Kibblesmith, he told Sci-Fi Wire, quote, "My passing familiarity coming in was actually pretty helpful for our back-to-basics approach to the team. We're going with most of the original members, plus Rage and Silhouette, who might as well be founding members the same way Captain America isn't technically a founding Avenger. When I think of my core team, those are the people I can't imagine doing without. Night Thrasher, Namorita, Firestar, Speedball, Rage. Justice is there, but he's torn between worlds because of his bigger role in Outlawed," unquote. Justice was also an original New Warrior, except he was known as Marvel Boy at the time. This I want to read. It's going to be a 5-issue limited series. It's going on sale in April from Marvel Comics. And, man, Outlawed is having some wide reach because, do you remember last week in the Experts podcast, we went over the Mutant Massacre and some of the unusual characters involved in it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Daredevil, Thor, Power Pack. Well, Power Pack is reforming after Outlawed for a one-shot. They're calling it Power Pack Grow Up. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Interesting.
Sorry, they're calling it Power Pack Outlawed. This is a follow-up as well as to the Outlawed event to a prior one-shot called Power Pack Grow Up. It's a 5-issue limited series that brings Ryan North, who did the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, together with Nico Leon, who has done Miss Marvel and Agents of Atlas. The first issue will have a main cover by Ryan Stegman, who's been doing Venom, and 2 variants. This series will reunite the classic team of Power Pack, Katie, Julie, Jack, and Alex Power. And they are pretty much Marvel's first young superhero team. They were doing it when they were adolescents, more or less. I don't know. Power Pack has never been my jam, but I'm curious to see this because they've actually grown up the characters. The older ones are in their early 20s. The younger ones are pretty much in the early teens. This feels like a story not just of growing up, but also of legacy and what the world can change when the world changes on you. I mean, shoot, one member of Power Pack, I think she was dating a runaway for a while. Marvel Comics has also decided to redeem Dr. Aphra. Last time we talked about the archaeologist in Star Wars, she had seemingly betrayed the rebel forces of Hoth and their location to Vader in exchange for her freedom and I believe her brother's freedom. Well, in the Empire Ascendant one-shot, it turns out that Luke Skywalker knows Dr. Aphra, and he got a message from whom he called a friend, who had apparently scrambled the Empire's records as to where they were. It was actually because of Aphra's interference that the rebellion had time to set up the force field generators that became famous in the Battle of Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back.
Cool.
It's like I tried to explain. She's a pragmatist. She generally tries to do the better thing, but often in the moment she'll do just enough to survive.
Can't blame her.
Considering who she's been palling around with, no. You know, between Darth Vader and those two murderous droids she hangs out with, it's kind of amazing that she's still coherent.
Mm-hmm.
Further on in Marvel comic news, we got a lot of X-Men news. I'm kind of surprised how much. First of all, X-Men number 7 has been delayed. However, it's evidently been delayed because they've raised the price of the book as well as the page count. It was originally solicited at 32 pages at $3.99, which is kind of generous considering most comics are 22 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is going to be 40 pages with a price of $4.99. Issue number 7 is now scheduled for release on February 26th. And this one sounds like it's going to have a high cost. This sounds like a key issue to me. Number 7. It's being written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Lionel Francis Yu. Get the solicitation here. Quote, "Mutants are forever. The resurrection protocols have changed everything for mutant kind. No more can humans hate and fear take their lives from them. But what else has it changed?" Unquote. Sounds like a secret's about to get revealed.
Yeah.
The cover is kind of
I wonder
scary.
which one this time.
I don't know. The cover's kind of scary, too, because it shows Apocalypse with a sword smashing through a stained glass window of Nightcrawler.
Oh.
Yeah, well, he's always arguably been the most religious of the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
He was a priest for a while in certain storylines.
Yeah.
To repeat, X-Men number 7 goes on sale February 26th from Marvel Comics. I have a feeling that's going to be a hot commodity. Also, Marvel Editorial is teasing a new major event for the X-Men. As if Dawn of X wasn't enough of a major event, they're teasing that this December there's going to be a new line-wide event that's going to cross over the X-Men books.
Really?
Yeah, this was part of a roundtable discussion of upcoming titles and storylines. According to senior editor Jordan D. White, he teased, quote, "plans for the next December that are really fun, along with a big X-Men crossover," unquote. Another editor, Charles Robinson, added to the roundtable, quote, "You are about to meet your new favorite class of X-Kids," unquote. And another editor, Annalise Bissa, said that there are several titles in the works for the new year that have yet to be announced. Current series that are known to be happening are the Hellions, X-Corps, Cable, and Wolverine series. Man, I thought this was going to simplify the X-Men universe, but we're already talking about like a dozen different X-Men series by the beginning of next year.
Wow.
Stories are getting complicated, though. I mean, I've read Excalibur number 5. Either of you?
No.
Nope.
Oh, things changed out there. I'm trying to figure out how to... Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this with the least amount of words, because the first 5 issues get kind of complicated. I mean, Betsy Braddock is the new Captain Britain. Her brother Brian, the prior captain, has been overtaken, corrupted by Morgan Le Fay, and made into her Black Knight champion. The X-Men are trying to get into Otherworld, but Otherworld is pushing back because For some reason, Krakoa is trying to open a portal directly to this place. Except the flowers from Otherworld are seeping into Morgan Le Fay's well of power, and she does not appreciate this. Let's see. Apocalypse has recruited Richter because he needs particularly powerful crystals to open the gateway between the realms. Captain Britain, Jubilee, and Gambit went to Otherworld to try and understand what's going on, and when they did, they took Jubilee's baby with them. Shogo? We talked about her. Yeah. Except Shogo did not go as he should have. Apparently, normal humans are affected differently by Otherworld, whereas mutants stay relatively the same.
Uh-huh.
Shogo transformed into a fire-breathing dragon.
Oh no.
No, I don't mean like Lockheed-sized fire-breathing dragon. We're talking like Dracarys
full-size,
fire-breathing dragon?
full-on.
Yeah. You know, something that...
Terrible twos were bad enough.
Yeah, something Daenerys could have rode in, you know? Anyway, to make a long story short, Rogue has been in a coma since issue 1 because of their attempted force breaching of the portal between Krakoa and Otherworld. And Apocalypse has been hanging out with his squad trying to mitigate everything. Well, as of the 5th issue, Rogue in her comatose state has been nudged several times by this fiery dog in a dream state. It looks like she's messing around with a circle of power, like a magic circle, in her dream state, right?
Right.
Except the more this dog pushes her, the more it starts to get very friendly and familiar with her. And that's when she mentioned this thing by name. She called it her little Prestige.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't know if you recall, but Rachel Summers' current call sign is Prestige.
Oh, what?
Yeah, in other words, while Excalibur has told Apocalypse physically that he's in charge of Rogue while she's in this state, because it's Apocalypse, nobody trusted him up front, and Betsy Braddock has had Rachel psychically trying to worm her way into Rogue's mind to understand what's going on. So, Rogue busts out of her coma, but she's upset, not because of the Krakoan portal, but because Apocalypse has apparently been manipulating things as far as she can tell. So she goes after him. And Apocalypse basically begs Rogue to kill him. It turns out, according to what he knows, to open the portal fully between Earth and Otherworld, it needs the bones of an ancient mutant.
Oh.
Yeah. So Rogue does as Apocalypse says. She grabs him and just basically wrangles him until he's out. He's done. And she's taken his mind and his memories, or at least echoes of it. But what Rogue finds out is that Apocalypse has planned all this, and he wants the throne of Otherworld. Now, I grant you, this sounds like a very Apocalypse thing to do, except this seems so at odds with his current mission. So, I'm curious to know if there's something else in here we haven't learned yet. Except the end of the issue, it ended on kind of a funky note, because everyone is staring at Rogue, and she doesn't understand why everyone's looking at her. You know, Gambit, Jubilee, Captain Britain, they're all staring at her like something's wrong. She can't see in the mirror. Her skin is blue.
Oh,
Ew.
obviously.
Yeah. And the question is, the last time she grabbed onto anybody and took that much of their life force to nearly kill them was Carol Danvers, and she had that floating in her head for over a decade.
Oh, no.
So you can sense the question of how permanent is this? And how bad is it that Rogue, who is currently has her own abilities, combined with a copy of Wonder Man's, now potentially with Apocalypse's molecular shifting abilities, and maybe his drives and motivations.
That could be very interesting or scary, depending on whose side you are on.
Technically, it could be
Yes.
both. So, yeah, Rogue is I don't think anybody knows how to really quantify this entire thing right now. I do not have the full page, but I have a little bit of an image of Rogue post-transformation at the end of the issue. Would you like to see her in her confused
Yes.
state?
Yes.
I mean, blue, I guess, is her color. But it even had those weird dark triangles that Apocalypse has on top of his head. And
Weird
Huh.
thing.
the blue
Weird.
line down her jaw.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of expecting, to be honest. But, yeah.
Yep. Paint me terrified.
Yeah, I still don't know how this will turn out. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's not.
No, we could only hope.
Well, there's one more bit of Marvel comic news, and it is X-Men related. Another new series has been announced for Phase 2 of the rollout of the post-Dawn of X era. This will go on sale... Wow, I actually don't have a period when this will go on sale. Oh, April of this year. A new team is being formed for X-Factor investigations. Their entire purview... Well, let me back up and just explain this properly. For those that don't know, the X-Men currently live in an era where they have a resurrection protocol. They can bring back 90% of the dead mutants in the history of Marvel Comics. Except, not all mutants are dead. Some are just missing. This is X-Factor's mission, to find the missing mutants. It's nice to see that someone is thinking a little more worldly rather than this is our nation, stay off it.
Right.
This is being done by the team who recently did the Gwenpool Strikes Back miniseries, Leah Williams and David Baldion. And the roster is kind of eclectic. I imagine that the person in charge is Polaris. She's in the middle of this image, and she's been in 2 prior iterations of X-Factor. Actually 3, now that I think about it. She's been in 3 different versions of this team. But from there, it gets weirder, and the the lineup gets about as odd as just about anything else going on in the X-Men these days.
How so?
Rachel Gray, Prestige,
Okay.
Eye-Boy from Generation X, Prodigy from the new X-Men. Apparently he's back, and I don't know if he's a mutant again, but there he is. North Star from Alpha Flight, and Wolverine's son,
Nice.
Daken.
Docket.
Yeah. Look, if you're going to be looking for mutants, you do kind of need a hunter. Kind of confused why they didn't ask Caliban, but there you go.
That's fair.
According to the solicitations, quote, mutants have conquered death. By the grace of the Five, the resurrection protocols can bring back any fallen mutant. But such a huge enterprise isn't without its problems and complications. When a mutant dies, X-Factor is there to investigate how and why to keep the rules of reincarnation. Writer Leah Williams and artist David Baldion take Northstar, Polaris, Prodigy, Eye-Boy, Daken, and Prestige into the world of murder and missing persons, unquote. So obviously part of their purview is trying to make sure that they don't accidentally resurrect someone who isn't dead.
I've always wondered that.
Well, I'm not sure that was part of the original mission that was set aside when Hickman was building this part of Marvel. However, it is nice to see that somebody is trying to keep the line taut. Eye-Boy is actually an interesting pick for that. He doesn't have any offensive abilities. His body is covered in eyes. Literally, that's his power. Except those eyes can actually see the unseen. Before they really hashed out all the different things that Eye-Boy is capable of seeing, they were trying to figure out how to track something magical. And that's when apparently this kid looked up and said, well, why don't we follow that trail that's hanging in the sky? Everyone looked up, what trail? You don't see that? He could actually see magical residue in the sky.
He's got an eye for that.
Yeah, he also has infrared, starlight, several other forms of vision already before that came up. He's a useful guy to have when you're looking for something. And I didn't mean that as a pun, but there it is.
Yes, you did.
Now we'll move on to DC comic news. We'll talk about the other major company in comics and what they have coming now and in the near future. Dan Didio, one of the co-publishers of DC, actually had quite a bit to say about DC's editorial process in the past few days. First of all, remember last week we touched on Gotham by Gaslight, the Absolute Edition that was canceled?
Yeah?
Yes.
He actually elaborated a bit on that subject, except just not on Gotham by Gaslight.
Oh.
Yeah, he was talking recently, and get this. He said, quote, we had a very poor 2018 with our collections. It forced us to reevaluate what we were collecting and how, so you saw a lot of changes taking place. If you saw the cancellations that occurred after solicitation, that's probably because there was no appreciable interest for these titles, meaning that we couldn't hit the minimum number to justify print. I'd much prefer just to cancel books than have devalued product out there, unquote.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
So basically, some of their collected editions were canceled just because of dismal sales.
Sounds very corporate.
Yeah, he went on to say, quote, "We have to find ways to make our collected editions valuable, so that people want to purchase them and put them on a shelf. We also have to reevaluate these collections of 6 issues and out. When you collect 6 issues of a periodical, regardless if it's a complete story, you're going to see more tweaking going forward, but I feel like we're in a very good place," unquote. He also apparently said that they're finding diminishing returns on graphic novels with numberings on the spines. The higher the number, the less likely people were to buy them. So, I mean, I understand where he's coming from. It's just kind of... I would think that's kind of troublesome, because that basically means you can't get people to buy collected editions of your bread and butter, the stories you're putting out there.
Right.
So, that almost... I can't tell if he's just downplaying a problem, or if maybe he can't see how this may lead to a larger issue.
Well, it's DC. They've been nearsighted for a long time.
Maybe, but I mean, it's not that I don't want them to thrive. It's just I can't see them doing it with this plan. I mean, those collected editions are how some people buy them if they don't buy the single issues. You have to find a way to make these worthwhile to people, and evidently, just buying the story is not enough for whoever's buying their collected volumes. That's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is.
In addition to that, Dan Didio also made a promise regarding DC's Black Label. A number of issues and series from the Black Label have been mysteriously and quickly canceled. And Didio offered an unofficial pledge to retailers going forward. He said in a statement, quote, "Extraordinarily successful for us. The response and reaction has been better than we could imagine. Our plan is to make sure we're consistent in the material we're putting out, and that it's strong, and that it comes out on time. We will not be soliciting anything until we are clear that this material will come out as scheduled," unquote.
That would be novel.
Yeah, some of the titles that aren't currently coming out under the Black Label are Superman's Year One, Batman Last Night on Earth, Brian Azzarello's Bird of Prey, Cami Garcia's Joker, Harley Quinn, Criminal Sanity. They've all experienced scheduling delays to some point.
Mm-hmm.
I myself recently bought the Harleen 3-part book from Stepan Sejic. All those came out on time. I'm glad they're taking it seriously that they need to put out what they promise. However, that's one of those things where I'd just rather... Instead of getting a promise that is technically non-binding, I'd just rather he put it out on time.
Right.
That still leads to me thinking that there's some kind of major editorial issue, because it sounds like the writers and the artists are working to their best and they're doing the work on time, but somehow it's getting lost in the shuffle of editorial and it's not being put out promptly.
Right. Sounds like it.
Didio also had to talk about a recent event series that we've been, I don't want to say lambasting, but we kind of have. Doomsday Clock.
Mm-hmm.
According to another statement by Didio, quote, "The schedule on Doomsday Clock made it very difficult to align a lot of product into it. You'll see a reflection of Doomsday Clock on the timeline," unquote. In other words, the problem he was coming up with was because of the delays to Doomsday Clock, a lot of the events happening in the book were not syncing with the rest of the DC universe anymore.
Oh, no.
The Doomsday Clock miniseries was originally announced to run from November 2017 to January 2019, but because of schedule changes and postponements after the second issue of the series, the last issue finally released in December of 2019. That is a 12-issue limited series that literally took 2 years to finish.
Whoa.
Didio continued, quote, "A lot of what's on the timeline has been driven by the story beats that came out in Doomsday Clock. It is truly affecting the line in that fashion. It doesn't line up completely, but the sensibility, the purpose, the introduction of the JSA, the introduction of the Legion of Superheroes, those are key aspects of what the timeline is. Once you'll see it on paper, it'll all make sense," unquote. Now, that leads me to wonder something, and I'm not expecting an answer. I don't think there is an adequate one. Could it be that DC editorial has had so many weird delays and problems recently because Doomsday Clock does touch on so many events that they want to portray as part of the canon?
I think that they're reaching too far, and that's always going to prove a problem in storytelling. When you're trying to match pieces up in a puzzle, you have to have them all on the same surface, or else they're not going to connect.
Between that and DC's fudged timeline, I think those are the primary problems in these books. I would almost say, and I'm not saying this as a fan, I'm saying this as like an administrator and overthinker, that if they were to take parts of the DC universe and shut them down temporarily to restart them in a coherent point, like the House of X and Powers of 10 minis, that might help clean this up some. At least then you would have a general starting point that everyone could build off of.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying line wide. I'm not saying cancel everything and then start from here. I'm just saying maybe you need to wrap up like Superman's Pantheon temporarily and then put out new issues that everyone can leap into and find out what in the heck is going on and where this fits.
And don't repeat New 52.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is very important.
Ever again. I hope they've learned from their mistakes and never, ever, ever repeat.
You know, I still miss the Superman and Aquaman from that era, though. They were fantastic characters.
I'm not a Superman fan.
Neither am I, but the truth version of Superman from the New 52, when he lost like the majority of his powers and had to find out how to deal, that was actually intriguing. You know, when somebody throws a truck at him and he goes to catch it, and just that realization, oh, wait, can't do this anymore.
Run out of the way.
Yeah. Although there is some news that DC has confirmed that will make Joanna very happy.
Does it have to do with Wonder Woman?
Yes, it does. And
Yay.
her 750th issue. As some people may recall, I believe The Flash and Wonder Woman will be the first series in DC to return to legacy issue numbering, which means that their issue counts will suddenly count up all the prior volumes of Wonder Woman and then continue it from that point as if they've all been one story. Issue number 750, I believe it comes out in this March. And The Flash, yes, is the other one that's going to go to legacy numbering. But issue number 750 is going to be important in the new absolute DC timeline. DC has declared that they will have a singular timeline that will somehow make all of its crisis, retcons, and reboots make sense. Okay?
I'll believe it when I see it.
I agree with you there. However, issue number 750 is important because not only is it the beginning of their timeline, it establishes that in DC's chronological continuity, Diana is the first hero to emerge in DC's universe.
Makes sense, actually.
So Batman was not the first, Superman was not the first, Diana will be the first superhero to come out in DC. I mean, theologically, makes a lot of sense. But it's also nice, though, that as a member of the supposed Trinity between Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, finally Wonder Woman has something to call her own.
The first.
Yes. She is the first hero. I mean, before, even though she's been around, she's been like the strongest female character in DC, possibly their strongest overall. However, every time the three of them stand together, she's not really marked as anything other than either the Warrior of Love, or she happens to be the woman in this group.
Yeah. They added her in there for minority reflection. Representation, that's what I was meaning. Yeah.
As well as you think it'd be more important since recent retcons place her as a demigoddess instead of just a creation of magic.
Right. But, you know, she's a woman in a man's world, so you can't expect too much.
Well, at least she's no longer the bondage hero.
No.
Right. Let's just forget that part of her history, shall we?
Well, moving forward to another DC hero, Batman. Batman number 86 came out, the first issue written by James Tynion IV. We are in the post-Tom King era and post-long-term storyline that he had going on there. And as we know, in the middle of Tom King's storyline, or I should say late in it, Alfred Pennyworth was killed by Bane. Despite all of my guesses, it wasn't a feint, it wasn't a fake. Alfred's gone. Except, I'm sorry?
I was going to say, Tom King's a lot of things, but he's never known to pull his punches.
Absolutely true. And the thing about his stories, the thing that you will find the one constant throughout all of his stories, is that he rebuilds heroes by first breaking them down to their absolute lowest points. And it's very easy to argue that losing Alfred would drive Bruce Wayne beyond those points.
Absolutely.
Except in James Tynion's new issue already, there's a replacement for Alfred's role in Bruce Wayne's life.
What?
Yeah, you know, Alfred was basically Bruce's guy in the chair. He was the one who watched his back from afar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That role is now being filled by Wayne Enterprises' CEO, Lucius Fox.
I was going to say, what about Overwatch?
Yeah, that's what Lucius does right now.
Or Oracle?
Well, Oracle did it more for the minor heroes. She assisted Bruce way less for reasons that are still mysterious to me.
Well, yeah, but still.
Well, then again, also Batgirl is an active person these days, not just a person in a chair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this may fill a dual role, because there's also a lot of rumors floating around that Bruce Wayne may be about to be replaced. I
believe that when I see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know where this is coming from, but there's apparently a lot of supposition right now, and this is based on indications from DC, that Bruce is going to be replaced by Lucius Fox's son, Luke Fox. Luke has already been...
Batman?
Yes. Luke has already been seen and knows who Bruce Wayne is in DC Comics. I believe he's a former military man. I don't know myself. I haven't read those particular issues.
So he's going to be a flying fox?
Ouch.
I was just going to say, don't let Bruce Wayne train him. Otherwise,
I would like to see
might
this.
not have a long career.
This story could have a lot of implications and possibilities, though. I mean, yes, there would be massive fan blowback, granted, to the replacement of Bruce Wayne.
There's always going to.
Except, not only would he be replaced by somebody who would already have the backup he needs in the form of his father to understand what he needs to do, he's also, again, if I remember correctly, militarily trained. But also, Luke is African American.
Cool.
I mean, I'm not saying that for the sake of diversity, but what does being black do to Batman's mythos?
That would be interesting to watch unfold.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions to unpack there that are not easy to answer. I mean...
Would it still be PC to call him the Dark Knight, then? Riddle me this. Just wondering.
I could not say. I mean, he definitely wouldn't be the world's greatest detective, because Luke Fox has not overarchingly studied, multiple forms of criminology that is just impossible to do in the amount of time given in a 24-hour day. So, I don't quite know if that title would apply anymore. There's a whole lot of curiosities here, because if Bruce Wayne is gone, then you automatically expel Batman from most of the upper level of DC's actions. The Luke Fox Batman would not be a cornerstone member of the Justice League. That guy would not be running the Outsiders. That guy probably would be barely acknowledged by the horde of Robins running around. So there's a lot to unpack as to where this Batman would fall, as in the hierarchy of heroes. Would he deserve it more or less? I could not say. I haven't seen an issue with this character. But it would change a lot about how DC operates. Maybe...
Would he... I was just wondering, would he qualify to be trained by Batman if he's not an orphan?
Wow, you are just cutting on this. I don't even...
I'm in fine form today.
All I have to say is, you've been poking at, him being trained by Batman, when we got Batwoman who's doing just fine without it.
I can also agree with that. It's just, unfortunately, we've had a Batman series, and DC readers did not keep up with her long term. Her series, I think, ended somewhere around 50 issues in. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's unfortunately just a fact. DC fans did not keep their excitement about the character like I hoped they would.
Maybe the writers failed to keep our interest.
It could also be that. I mean, there was that whole issue where DC editorial would not allow Kathy Kane to get married at all. She could have a girlfriend, but she couldn't get married, which is just strange.
That's double standard.
More than a bit. However, there is the added question as to... I suddenly have this image in my mind of a bunch of Robins standing around Luke Fox in the Batman outfit. You know, and all of them ask to a person, what makes you think you can do this? My dad's still alive.
Ooh, burn.
Well, yeah, when Damian Wayne says, yeah, what about it?
Well, if Bruce Wayne's gone... Yeah. Because you gotta admit, the only way you're gonna stop Bruce Wayne from being Batman is to kill him.
Or paralyze him.
But that didn't stop him.
Yeah,
that didn't stop him. He came back and beat up Jean Paul Valley to get the cowl back.
Well, paralyze him from the neck down then. I don't know.
So make him like every other male in the world.
He would just have to sit there screaming at them as at his new recruit.
Oh, God, so
Basically
nothing's
just
changed.
like a bat head.
Yeah, nothing's
Just sitting
changed.
there.
Oh, man. As a matter of fact, in the comics, Batman has also used a new gadget in number 86. They're small black orbs. He calls them shadow casters. I thought they were some kind of new gas pellet or maybe some way to project like some kind of dark energy so he would create his own shadows to wander through if necessary. But no, it's actually much more basic than that. They are small devices that somehow follow people that they're dropped near, and they cast a shadow of Batman's profile on the wall. It basically drives them to panic.
Ooh, creepy. I like that.
Kind of awesome.
Where do I get some?
I don't know. So it's just a way to keep criminals on edge and make them wonder if, you know, how close behind me is he? One of those type things.
That is actually terrifying.
That's genius.
So, at least there's new ideas coming out of this. Last up in DC comic news, the writer of a new young graphic novel for DC readers, Diana, Princess of the Amazons. She had an interview with CBR.com. The writers are Shannon and Dean Hale. The art's by Victoria Ying. And Shannon Hale actually had some interesting ideas as to why she wanted to take on this particular character. A very young version of Diana. We're talking like preteen version, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon said, quote, "We started with Diana. When we first talked to editors at DC, they were awesome. They were like, you know, if you could pick any character, what would your dream character be? What would you want to do? Diana was our first choice, and honestly, I didn't think we were going to be so lucky as to write Wonder Woman. They said, yeah, so that was a dream come true. Part of why I wanted to do Diana personally is not only because I've always loved Wonder Woman, but because I thought her story as a kid would be so fascinating. She grew up on Themyscira as the only child in her entire world. What would that have felt like? And as a storyteller, I'm really intrigued by the idea of that. I think kids can really relate. Although they're not the only kid in their world, everyone has felt like the oddball or the weird one, and something's different about me, and have felt lonely. I felt this is a really great story to explore those more universal feelings," unquote.
Neat.
I'm actually intrigued by that idea, because that's always something that people fail to detail about Diana's life. She was the only child on an island full of women.
Right. I'd read it.
Yeah,
When's it coming out?
Let me scroll down and double check, because this graphic novel, for all I know, it might already be out. I can tell you that the enemy of this is Circe. She's the villain in this story. The
villain.
graphic novel, Diana, Princess of the Amazons, is already on sale from DC Comics, so it should be at your local comic shop.
Sweet.
You know, if not, I would check the listings on your local Barnes & Nobles. You may be able to find it there.
Mm-hmm.
Last up is our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. And I do have a little bit of information about Stockton Con. This is happening this coming January 19th, 2020. It is running from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in Stockton, California. And they did announce a special guest in the form of Damian Chapa. Damian Chapa, you may not know him terribly well. He's an actor who's been in a few projects. Probably the most notorious of which was Blood In, Blood Out, a movie about gang members in East LA and the various paths their lives take them on.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably more aware of him as Ken Masters from the Street Fighter movie.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, he played Ken in the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm not sure even he admit that at this point. I have not seen that movie since the 80s, and I can't imagine it's aged very well.
No.
Not at all.
You know, I always felt kind of bad that was the last thing that came out while Raul Julia was still alive.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, there were other things he did that came out later because of production and everything, but that was the last project while he was alive that came out. And I love Raul Julia. I think he's a fantastic actor, but he was chewing that scenery hardcore in that movie.
I think he was the only one having the fun.
Might very well be. He was playing just... His M. Bison wasn't necessarily powerful. He was more...
Charismatic.
It was more like what it would look like if Skeletor had skin in the old 80s cartoons. It was just always kind of off and just very flourishing and things like that, you know? Further on in convention news anyway, TFCon is happening in Orlando, Florida, March 20th through 22nd. They've just announced that Livio Ramondelli is a guest for their convention. Livio has been the artist on a number of comic book series for Transformers IDW universe. He's done Robots in Disguise and More Than Meets the Eye. However, he is also the artist currently responsible for the current Transformers Galaxy series.
Oh.
The first 4 issues of which are a Year One style story about the origin of the Constructicons in this universe.
How far is that along?
It's still 3 issues along. By the end of this month, the 4th and final issue telling this tale will finally be out. I know it feels like it's been delayed. It has not, only because we're dealing with a couple holidays during the release period. You know, that tends to muck up everything unless you're one of the big 2. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is in addition to Casey Collier, who has been an artist on All Hail Megatron and Transformers Sourcebook, and Bob Badansky, the official creator of Generation 1 Transformers. Badansky is the guy who worked for Marvel Comics at the time, who wrote the first origins of the Transformers. You know, I'm almost sad I'm not in Orlando, because that is a group of people I would love to get either art and or signatures from. That would be hella fun.
Well, Liv is kind of all over the place. I've
What?
seen him at all kinds of conventions.
Well, yeah, I saw him at San Diego Comic-Con. I still have a poster to get you that he signed. But, you know, Bob Badansky?
Yeah.
I would love to get that signature in my book. Diamond has named the top direct market comic books and publisher of 2019. Would you like to take a guess what the top selling comic book of all of last year was?
The title or the book?
I won't ask for numbers because that's kind of cruel, but the top selling comic.
I'm gonna feel gross saying this. Dark Knight's Metal.
That was like 2 years ago, so no, not possible.
Oh, okay. Okay, I don't feel so bad now.
Okay.
Shoot.
Would you like a hint?
Marvel
Sure.
or DC?
It was a Jam Piece comic.
Jam Piece.
Yeah, it featured a ton of artists and writers.
Yeah, I don't know.
No idea.
Detective Comics number 1000.
You know, yeah.
The 80th anniversary of Batman.
Of course.
Even though it was huge at, I believe it was 80 some odd pages, and had a $9.99 cover price, that was the comic book bought most by both retailers and fans in the past year. Other notables on that, well, it's actually kind of notable that the number 2 book wasn't even Marvel or DC, it was Image.
Really? What was it?
Spawn number 300.
Oh,
Of course.
Makes sense.
7 number 1s published by Marvel were also high sellers in the past year, starting with the X-Men number 1 relaunch. That came in at the 3rd place. Marvel Comics 1000, the anthology book for their own universe, came in at number 7. As far as overall dollar share, that was pretty much ruled by Marvel at 40.2%. They also had an overall unit share, in other words, of all the comics sold in the year, of 44.7%. DC came in at number 2 with numbers that would make me kind of mad in a boardroom at Warner Brothers. DC came in at 29.29% dollar share.
Wow.
That is low.
And 30.74% unit share compared to the numbers I read you from Marvel earlier. I mean, 10% beneath Marvel in dollars is not good, but almost 15% lower in units than Marvel?
Sheesh.
I'd have to have a hard conversation with a lot of people I worked with.
Yeah.
Image came in at number 3 with 8% of dollars share and 7.69% of market share. Considering where they started, that's a pretty solid number. IDW came in 4th. So overall, it wasn't a terrible year for anybody, but again, if I worked at DC, I'd be upset with numbers. The top-selling comic books, we talked about Detective Comics number 1, Spawn 300 at number 2, X-Men number 1 at number 3. Okay, I'm surprised by this. Number 4 was Black Cat number 1.
Really?
Yeah, apparently a lot of people picked that up. Deceased number 1, the event book for DC, came in at number 5. Absolute Carnage number 1 at number 6. Marvel Comics number 1 at number 7. House of X number 1 at 8. Powers of 10 number 1 at 9. And at number 10, War of the Realms number 1.
Really?
Woohoo.
Yeah, after reading those numbers and thinking about all the complaints I hear at both comic book shops and on the internet of people who say they're just sick and tired of event books, it seems like everyone's buying event books. Who knew?
You mean people on the internet are wrong?
Evidently, or at least the sycophants that just keep complaining about it.
Yeah.
DC did do pretty well when it came to graphic novel sales, though. Watchmen, as a trade paperback, is still the number 1 seller of the past year. Number 2 was Saga Volume 1 from Image Comics. Number 3 was the first volume of Umbrella Academy, Apocalypse Suite from Dark Horse. Number 4 was Monstrous Volume 1 from Image Comics. Wow, number 5 was another DC book, Mr. Miracle, the limited series collected.
Really?
Yeah. Number 6 is going to break hearts, and I mean that quite literally. It was Die Volume 1 from Image Comics. Number 7 was the Batman White Knight trade paperback, the entirety of the first story. Number 8 was the 31st volume of The Walking Dead. See, that kind of blows a hole in Dan Didio's theory. They're still buying numbered books, just not yours.
Ha.
Number 9 was Batman The Killing Joke hardcover, and number 10 was the Batman Damned hardcover. So DC does pretty well at graphic novels. I don't quite know what they're complaining about.
They're not the best, hence they'll complain.
Hey, I guess maybe the sales aren't as strong as they would like overall. Now, this really did surprise me, though, because obviously we just entered a new decade, so people are going to like to hit those landmarks, right? What was the best of the last decade? Well, CBR.com did some research, and they found the number 1 selling comic of the past decade, January 2010 to December 2019. One was evidently quite above the rest. You want to take a stab at it?
And whose it was?
Yep.
Was it from the big 2?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Except
Marvel?
Except it sort of wasn't.
What do you mean?
It is from the big 2, except it's not a series you usually associate with the big 2.
Huh.
This particular series kind of exists in its own galaxy, if you will.
Star Wars?
Star Wars number 1 from 2014 exceeded 1 million copies sold to the direct market.
Good guess.
That makes it not just the top-selling comic of the last decade. That makes it the top-selling comic of the last 20 years.
Wow.
It was written by Jason Aaron with art by John Cassidy, colors by Laura Martin. So that may not make it necessarily the most expensive book of the last 20 years. If it's the highest selling, that means a lot of people have it. However, that does kind of confirm people's interest in Star Wars.
You think?
This was also the first issue of the current run of Marvel Star Wars comics. Fun fact for those people who don't know, Star Wars comics originally started at Marvel back in the 80s, well, actually back in the late 70s. Marvel had the original license to it. Then in the mid-80s, after Star Wars fever cooled off, the license was taken from Marvel and it was moved to Dark Horse, a rather well-selling group of independent comic books, as well as the source of a lot of expanded universe lore back in the days.
Yep.
But after Disney bought out LucasArts about 5 or 6 years ago, Disney decided to bring all of its licenses under one house and basically handed Star Wars over to Marvel, which was another of its subsidiaries, and made them produce new comics based on the new timeline they put together.
And piss off half the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Arguable.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
The comic books don't seem to be much of an argument. It's the movies that people argue over.
Well, I've heard both.
I haven't heard much of one. IDW Comics has taken on a big project with the Smithsonian of all organizations.
Really?
Yeah, starting this fall, IDW and the Smithsonian will produce a series of graphic novels based on the Smithsonian's vast holdings in science, art, and history and culture. The plans include biographical graphic novels, coloring, and picture books for both children and adults. They will also have historical adaptations and a series of graphic novels based on time trials, which is a series of videos at the National Museum of American History. So IDW is going to put out a whole bunch of historical and scientifically accurate graphic novels for once.
Shock.
Hey, look, I'm not complaining. You know, sometimes it's the easiest way to tell a story is, you know, visually like that.
It's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
No. And I'm sure IDW got the license not necessarily because they were the largest company, but because they could do it for the most reasonable cost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, goodness knows, I'm sure Marvel and DC could both take this on, but considering the parent companies, you'd have to pay a pretty penny to get their stuff, or to get their contracts to work on this thing.
Also, DC would write it and then rewrite it and then retcon the rewriting of their original writing.
You say all that, but all of a sudden I have this image of Ben Franklin in a long dark coat standing on the middle of a rooftop in Victorian New England just screaming, "I am Ben Franklin."
Lightning behind him. Ooh, shiny.
White Eyes Ben Franklin behind his behind his glasses, yeah. Oh well,
So
I look.
Put it past them, honestly.
I look forward to seeing what they do put out, though. Believe it or not, The Mask has become the President of the United States.
What?
Dark Horse Comics has an exclusive preview going out right now to The Mask, I Pledge Allegiance to the Mask, number 4, which includes the Mask himself taking the Oath of Allegiance. Except things are a little more complicated, because according to the solicit for this comic going on sale, January 22nd, the Mask is calling out to the minds of those previously under its control, people who previously wore the mask at some point. And it's setting pieces
Hold on,
in...
are we talking about the Mask, the green face guy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I was genuinely stumped at who else it could be.
Well, the Mask is calling out to the minds of the people who previously wore it, and it's setting pieces into motion that will lead to a conclusion that is, quote, explosive in more ways than one, unquote.
Even Milo, the dog?
Very possibly. For those that are unaware and do not like Jim Carrey's movies, the Mask is a literal ancient mask that has the spirit of the Nordic trickster god Loki stuck in it. Mm-hmm. And it tends to bring out the worst and weirdest impulses in the people that wear it. The most famous of which is Stanley Ipkiss, who had a big fondness for 1940s and 50s Looney Tunes, so he just kind of acted like a cartoon character. But some people have worn it, and it's been more malicious. I believe there was a fight between the Mask and Lobo at some point in comic book history.
Ooh, I'd read that. I gotta go find it.
I know the Mask met Wildstorm's Grifter at one point, and the Grifter just had no idea what to make of this thing. Last up in general comic and convention news. Has anyone been reading the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers crossover?
No.
Okay, I only ask because according to a concept art that was released by the artist Simone DeMeo, things may get worse in this 5-part limited series. I know the first 2 issues are out. I bought the first one, haven't picked up the second one so far. But when I say things are going to get worse, I'm talking about the identity of the new Green Ranger in this miniseries.
Is he a turtle?
No, his name is Oroku Saki.
Oh, damn.
Sounds Japanese. I don't get the name.
Jesse, you want to
Shredder.
explain this? Yeah.
That's the
Go ahead.
Shredder.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's an image of the Shredder whose outfit has been modified with green Dragonzord eyes. He's wearing the golden shield that has a few more sharp, pointy bits on it, and his outfit,
What?
other than his purple cape and sash, he's wearing a lot of green and gold in this image.
What?
According to DeMayo's post and the official character drawing released by IDW, this is coming out in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and TMNT number 3.
I need to know, though, did somebody recreate the green power coin? Because that was destroyed.
Well, Tommy has actually been running around in New York. That's kind of the crux of the series, is that the Turtles first run into this mysterious new foot soldier who's dressed in green with a gold shield and trying to kick the crap out of him. So when the Power Rangers show up looking for their friend, the Rangers look at these and just go, "Oh, we just got done fighting this. We ain't having it." And so they fought each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Green Ranger is apparently working for the Foot Clan. And, knowing Shredder as I do, it looks like he gets his hands on Tommy's Power Morpher at some point, judging by his belt.
Good.
I sent you guys an image.
I mean, that's a really awesome crossover piece.
It's a great design. It looks like they worked hard on it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm just confused as to just canonically and historically how.
Well, considering this is a crossover between two comic companies, I wouldn't think too hard about comic book timelines.
Yeah.
We are talking about the TMNT, who's owned by IDW as far as comic books right now, and Boom Studios, who is the owner of the Power Rangers license. Mm-hmm. So I think I think within the confines of this series, you just kind of let it fly and see where it develops.
It's a good design. I'm just really stunned.
I agree. I saw this and I'm just like, new Green Ranger. Well, what can be important about? Whoa!
I'll have to see if my husband's read this one.
Because
he's all over the...
There's the immediate impact of just visually that's really nice, but then you think, wait, the Shredder was already dangerous before he started to access magic science fiction powers and...
Raggy.
What if... Oh, no. I mean, this could get worse. I mean, what if he has access to the Dragon Dagger?
Oh, snap.
Oh.
Does the look of the Dragonzord change depending on who's wielding that dagger?
I would say no, but don't quote me on that.
I know we're dealing with alternative comic book logic here. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Shredder supposedly can beat up all the turtles at the same time.
Yeah.
And this.
There is something to be said about this outfit, because you got to consider, most of the time when these power coins are passed between new Rangers, the outfits are always static. They stay the same. Something about the Shredder actually affected the transformation so that it seems to have formed around him instead of just on top of him. It's actually melded with his Shredder outfit.
Maybe he forced his will upon it.
It could be. It could be that he just has that force of will that makes it bend to what he wants.
Yikes.
Which leads me to ask the question about the Dragonzord again. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of possibilities that will not be answered very quickly. However, looking at that image, yeah, I may have to go back and pick up the second issue and then pick up the third to see just what the heck happened here.
Yeah, why don't we put this on our list at some point?
Yeah, I would definitely be down for that.
I'm okay with that. But we do have to talk about what is currently on the list. The subject of this week is Marvel Comics' Marauders from 2019. This is the spin-off series coming out of the Dawn of X of a small group of X-Men who have a very, very focused mission within this new world order. The writer of this series is Jerry Dugan. The art is by Matteo Lolli. The colors are by, wow, I'm not even sure I could pronounce that right, Federico Blee. The letters are by VC's Corey Pettit. And the Marauders was probably the third spin-off series to come out of this new era of X-Men. And it actually started way simpler than I thought. The first images there of Kitty Pryde trying to access the Krakoan portals and running into a literal wall when she tried to cross it. Because so many mutants had walked in before her, Storm and Nightcrawler ushered her inside, and she was just kind of freely walking, and she, because she's the only one to hit some kind of weird barrier when she crosses it, she accidentally broke her own nose.
Yeah, and puts her in a state of shock for like, I don't know if she's ever gotten out of that.
I seriously doubt it myself, based on what's come out after this first image, the way she's acted, and the way she's portrayed. I think she's in a perpetual depression about this.
Oh, yeah. You're an outcast among outcasts, so to speak.
Well, you're not just an outcast among outcasts. You're an outcast from outcast paradise. The one place
worse.
the one place where it's supposed to be safe to be you. On top of which, we're talking about a character that is Jewish. This whole thing just gets worse the further you dig into what could be going through her mind.
She's quite possibly the nicest person on the planet.
She's definitely the most worldly of the X-Men. She's one of the few who actually thinks about how what she does affects other people for the most part. Which is also something that seemed to go out the window over the course of these 5 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so after a short group or a short information page regarding what intelligence has been watching the X-Men since they started to develop this nation, we see Kitty Pryde on a small sailing boat whistling to herself as Lockheed hunts seagulls.
Dragon's got to eat.
Yeah, but he only brought back a wing.
It's sport.
Well, he ate the rest of it. He's sharing.
Anyway, the first time Kitty Pryde actually lays eyes on Krakoa was because she physically sailed herself there, walks up to its shores, tests one of the portals at the beach just to see if it works, and she can't use this one either. So evidently, her inability to use Krakoan gates is global. You know, it's even worse when she's standing there trying to force her hands through it, and that one child is standing next to her. I heard about you. You're that mutant that can't use the gates.
Oh, that look on her face.
Yeah.
I'd be like, shut up, kid.
Pride suddenly looks like an anime character that just found their anger level, looks down and says, and you're that kid everyone wants to fight. You know, something else that just flashed on me looking at this image of her trying to press her way through the gate? Think about how much worse this is for her. The one character who can pass through anything cannot pass through these gates.
Oh, the irony is not lost on me.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, it's just like everything about this is almost made to make her hurt on some level.
It's personal. It has to be.
Yeah. I mean, the question still comes to who. The one who benefits the most is Emma Frost, but this doesn't feel like an Emma move.
It really doesn't.
No, she wouldn't make someone this sad just to get what she wants. Especially with the revelation that Pride wasn't even the first person she wanted on this project. Something else is at play here, I'm positive of that. Iceman does try to show up to console Pride in his own way, and by that I mean a whole lot of snide remarks that aren't very consoling. But while they're talking, that image of Logan suddenly running past them into the ocean so that he can swim to her boat.
Yeah.
You know, he's asking on the run if she got it all, and she did. And as they're talking about it and trying to eat is when Logan passes back by, still dripping wet, carrying a box of whiskey, or crate of whiskey, and a keg of beer. Apparently that was the important stuff. The info page on the next image here, that Logan's entire shopping list for Pride was ribs, Canadian Club whiskey, suds, Cubano sandwiches, pomade, and coffee.
Because Krakoa, for some inexplicable reason, cannot produce this stuff.
Well, it can, but it's taking time, because Krakoa itself is a living entity, and it's taking a long time for the X-Men to figure out how to adapt standard human or earthen crops to it. As we saw in the New Mutants, they figured out how to make coffee. It just took a while.
Yeah,
Thank goodness.
And by some of their reactions, they aren't really too fond of the process.
Well, Mondo isn't, but the others are fine with it.
Wasn't it Magic that was like,
oh,
you touch it and you die?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, she was the one who was holding a nearly full pot of coffee and said, and we're all out. But aren't you holding on to, we are all out?
She's like, come here, your big cup of coffee.
And proceeds to chug it in the next panel.
Yeah.
That's basically my life.
But this is where Emma, who evidently is somewhere in New York, contacts Pride telepathically and makes the offer to her. The one that basically says, we want you to run a ship for us. A, because for some reason the gates still aren't working and they haven't figured that out on their end. B,
actually, she's in London.
Oh, London, sorry. B, because they need someone to smuggle Krakoan drugs into the places that currently find them illegal so they can control the black market. They don't want somebody else getting the drugs and then selling it on their behalf and making the profits they could be making anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds very CIA heroin in the ghetto type thing. And then C, they need someone who at the same time can smuggle the mutants in unfriendly countries out of those countries to Krakoan gates. Which at this point includes places like Wakanda, North Korea, and Russia. And Brazil. And,
Interesting.
yeah, Pride more or less doesn't have anything else to do with her time because without the gates, she can't be an active X-Man like the others.
Mm-hmm.
And she still has a very big problem fitting in on the island if she can't use these gates, period, whereas everyone else has instant transmission. Meanwhile, Iceman has gone straight to Russia to find out why no mutants have come through the gates from there. What he finds instead are soldiers on the other side, including one in giant red power armor. I thought this was a new version of the Crimson Dynamo in Marvel Comics. He had most of the ear markers, but he immediately hits Iceman with a blast that nullifies Bobby's powers. Changes him back to human, even. Which is pretty dangerous. I mean, power dampening armor already.
Mm-hmm.
He barely dove back through the gate before they took a shot at him. Thankfully, the gate only transports mutants, not anything not physically connected to them. So while he's trying to ice himself back up, he finds Pride, who apparently has been sitting outside the gate, getting ripped. She apparently stole several bottles of Canadian whiskey from that crate she bought from Logan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the moment where she decides she's in. She wants to go fight some aggro-humans, as she put it.
Mm-hmm.
Just that half-drunken declaration. I want to fight some aggro-humans. Iceman, get in my boat! And so at the same time, Pride asks Storm to be the wind at their back so they can make the sails work. And it's pretty evident by this time that Kitty's been drinking rather unhealthy amounts of that whiskey.
Oh, pretty sure she's been doing it on the trip there.
More than likely. This is where we switch to Taiwan, Taipei specifically, where a woman is claiming that her husband, a very well-to-do business individual, touched one of the Krakoan gates to see if he could get through it, and he vanished. So this woman is turned to an anti-mutant propagandist, more or less. She claims that it's the mutant's fault her husband has disappeared. And when Bishop tries to just ask her some questions about what's going on, she denied the opportunity to answer any questions, just turned her back on him. She even called him and his word worthless. So Bishop has a new mystery to investigate. We flash back to Pride's boat, who is sailing on the oceans thanks to Storm. And as they're discussing it, a man in a yellow suit wakes up and gets out of the cabin. And that yellow and red suit is pretty noticeable as Pyro.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except it's not the Pyro that's been palling around with the X-Men in their recent series pre-Dawn of X. This is the original, the Australian, St. John Allardyce.
Hmm.
And this is where we find out that the reason why he stowed away on this boat was because he was desperate to get off Krakoa. Unfortunately for him, he was used as the first lab rat to test whether or not they could bring people back from the dead. I still ask the question, why did they tell him that? Why would anyone tell him that? That seems cruel. You know, welcome back to the land of the living. Nice to see it worked. But they don't have time to turn around because they're already well into their trip to Russia, so the agreement is Pyro can come with, but he can't kill and he has to behave. And when they do arrive in Russia, Storm and Iceman's first shot in that power armor wasn't even enough to knock it offline. They managed to use it against the two of them. But that was a distraction Pride needed so she could phase through it and disrupt the electrics of the armor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Pride pretty much stopped using her powers for a while because she started facing Russian soldiers one-on-one. Oh,
then she started getting really creative with her powers.
Yeah, when she... I mean, she stole a man's rifle, hit him in the face with it, shot one in the knee, then she grabbed that rifle and phased it into the thighs of 2 other people.
Yeah. Crave is probably not the right word.
No, I mean, she's getting dangerous and risky with it, which makes me think she's still drinking. But while there is something to be argued about these guys are trying to kill her, she is doing literal life-altering damage to these people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when she unphases this thing in 2 guys' thighs, that means that thing is... It's molecularly bonded to him. It's going to take a surgeon, I don't know how long, to try to remove that. And
no, it's yeah, those legs are gone. Those legs are just straight up gone.
Well, I mean, at least one of them is, because the butt of that is definitely through his femur. The way she took down the tank, though, that had some style to it.
Yes.
When it was trying to drive over her, she just phased long enough to get into the pilot's compartment, seemingly somersaulted her way out of it. Then you realize she's carrying the pins to the smoke grenades on his chest. Yeah. But Pyro got the chance to play with something he never had before. Because his powers do not generate fire, he can only control created fire.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So he was asking for a light just so he can get involved in what's going on, and that's when Pride ordered Lockheed to give him some dragon fire. Kid in a candy store, I swear. He was so happy to play around with it, but somehow he managed not to kill anyone. And
somehow.
Even though they drove all the soldiers away and were starting to escort the mutants to the small boat they had, Pride was still testing the gate on the Russian end to see if she can get through it, and she still can't. But she managed to deflect her disappointment by suddenly declaring themselves the Marauders, and that they're going to bring these mutants home to Krakoa.
Yeah.
I like that they added in the dialogue. It was a very strange name for her to pick, and she was just kind of in the moment and wasn't thinking about it.
Well, being drunk and whatnot.
I know, but now that I know what happened in the Mutant Massacre, I'm kind of surprised she chose that name at all, considering how badly they injured her. They are the reason she was a living ghost during a certain period. But Iceman and Storm agree to stay on the boat, and Pyro really has nowhere else to be. And the second issue of this is where things start to get kind of deep. First of all, one of the things we learn is that Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost, as far as running the Hellfire Trading Company, who is supposed to be getting these black market Krakoan drugs to different locations, are definitely not on the same page.
No.
Yep.
You know, despite the fact that they agreed to Krakoa, Shaw is still trying to run the Hellfire Trading Company more or less like a Hellfire Club.
Mm.
You know, he sees himself as the de facto king and ruler, and most of the decisions should go through him. He's not used to having equals. Which Emma is at this point. And something else we discover is that from dialogue we found out that Emma first asked Storm to run this smuggling route, which they did not. And evidently her second choice was the Stepford Cuckoos.
Mm-hmm.
Not a terrible choice, but that's not really their purview. That's not a place they would flourish. And the other thing that's kind of knocking on Shaw was that he expected to be able to name the third part of the ruling triad of the Hellfire Trading Company, the Red King or Queen location, or position, I'm sorry. He did not know that Emma had already chosen somebody to run this role.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we flash back to the Marauders, who are still doing what they do, except now they are trying to attack a cargo ship that may be smuggling mutants in a rather unfriendly fashion. Oh no, I'm sorry. They've hit Shaw's boat.
Yeah.
The Marauders hit Shaw's boat, who has Batroc the Leaper running it. And I gotta admit, as far as mercenaries go, that's a pretty good pick.
Actually, my understanding, Batroc stole it from the trade routes, and
he stole it from the trade routes, but he's still running it for Sebastian Shaw.
Yeah, he is running for Sebastian Shaw.
I mean, basically what you've got here is a double blind. I mean, it's Shaw's boat, and Batroc stole it for Shaw.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much Shaw trying to get the excess profits from the drugs by being able to sell it however he wants. And you got to give Batroc credit. He was giving both Iceman and Pyro all they could handle.
Mm-hmm.
Even knocked Storm back to the Marauders' own boat.
Well, he's tangled with Avengers, so he knows how to deal with people.
Yeah, but Pride is still getting kind of freaky with the use of her powers. I mean, when she nerve pinched that guy trying to stab her in the back, then
that was tricky.
Yeah, then danced with him until he was kind of phased halfway in and out of several objects. And
tangled him through everything, and I literally mean everything.
Yeah, and then scared him beyond belief when she pushed him through the side railing wall and then eventually let him fall into the ocean. That's borderline torturous.
Yep.
But I do like how after Batroc thinks he's been bested, not beaten, just bested, and he wants a chance to convince Pride not to take the boat.
Cut a deal.
Yeah, he wants to cut a deal. Well, Batroc's a pragmatist. You know, he'll go wherever there's the most money for the least amount of trouble. And in this case, the X-Men are handling him a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah. They have written off the cargo that's in here and says, no, it belongs to no one now.
Yeah. Instead of even trying to put it on their boat, they scuttle it.
Yep.
They were trying to send Shaw a very strong message, which I'm sure put a huge smile on Emma's face.
Yeah, hit him where it hurts.
Yeah,
in
but
the wallet.
It also did occur to me that very early on in this issue, the boat that the Marauders were using was not the one they came in the first issue. This is not a sailboat. This is a yacht. And what is the name that's painted on the banner on the sides? Under Cruz de la Booze.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's one of those boats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the name Pride gave it. I
think that's the banner that came with it when they borrowed it.
Okay. But when they get back to Taipei, instead of trying to moor the boat, they immediately sell it for an embarrassingly small amount of money. 50. You know, I assume that's... I don't know if that's dollars, or I don't know if that's 50K. I assume not, because they don't seem to want to keep this thing at all. They're just not interested.
Mm-hmm.
But Pride and the Marauders managed to party it up a little bit in Taipei while they're while they're looking for Bishop. And Bishop relays that they have a mystery that needs solving. Except at the same time, this was during the period in X-Force where Xavier was shot through the head.
Right.
It's kind of amazing, though, that the Marauders are momentarily shocked, but then Iceman's response is, believe in the Five, they can bring him back. But Pride's response to all this is to drink a bit more and go get tattoos across her knuckles.
Yeah, just go desensitize herself.
What were you saying, Joanna?
I never understood why she got the tattoos on her finger, on her knuckles.
I think part of this is a rebellion, and the other part is just depression coming out physically. I mean,
that's fair.
Out of everyone, only Pride and Pyro got tattoos. It's the two people that seem to be very emotionally damaged right now. Pride still can't enter paradise. Meanwhile, Pyro knows that he's a dead man who was given life. So he gets that death's head mask in place of his cowl put on his face.
That is a lot of pain.
Yeah, that is a big cry for help. It's like the only bit of levity in all this is, Bishop just looking at the tattoo man and saying, I already have one, man.
Mm-hmm.
And they overpaid. They overpaid the tattoo artist too.
Mm-hmm.
They gave him a lot of cash, and Pride says it was in case she returned broke one day, and then kisses him before she leaves.
Yeah, and that's never explained. It's driving me nuts.
No, like I said, I think her depression's coming out in very strange ways. And although Pride can't use Krakoan gates, Emma sends a backup to send them to London in the form of Gateway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gateway was there during the Outback era of X-Men. He's an Aborigine who has the power to create point-to-point teleportation. And he was killed. I don't recall. I think in X-Force he was killed. Not the current one. A couple versions of the series ago, when somebody was trying to kill all the mutant teleporters.
Mm.
Obviously, Krakoa breaks the rules. But he sends the Marauders to London so that they can see their new official boat, their permanent boat. And it's
Yeah, it's a destroyer.
Well, it's kind of the misbegotten child of a luxury yacht and a frigate. It has very large anti-ship cannons, anti-aircraft guns. I believe a missile launcher is hidden in the back there.
Wouldn't doubt it.
Well, Emma Frost did completely give him. Well, she pretty much gave him an unlimited budget when it came to this thing, and she designed it herself. And Emma Frost, for all of her bluster and for all of her attitude, she's not stupid. And Shaw is just upset with Emma for usurping the control of the third chair. She already gave it to someone that she's not talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And Shaw tries to threaten her physically, which may have flown before, but now she can transmute herself into living diamond.
Yeah, it doesn't fly anymore.
Yeah.
The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
And before he can even ask who the Red King is, they introduce themselves. I guess at some point we don't know. Emma has told Pride that she is the new Red Queen of the Hellfire Trading Company.
And then we see the red piece of material that she grabbed when she got the tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's a pirate coat.
I love how she was slowly piecing together this outfit until the very end.
Yeah.
And it's fully on in what's the word I'm looking for?
She's turned pirate.
Yes.
She's gone full-on pirate.
Just full-on embraced it.
Yeah.
I would say she's more of a privateer because she is sanctioned by Krakoa and the
difference between a private and a privateer is what side of the sword you're on.
As well as its official...
And also which
nation you work for.
Nation entity backs you.
Well, not just nation, though, but entities. I mean, privateer implies that the nation acknowledges you in some way. She's more of a pirate. She's working under the radar. She's a smuggler.
She has the support and backing of Emma.
I know, but she's still a smuggler. She's still dealing with the black market. She's one of Krakoa's private pirates. And when I say pirates, I mean less...
Privateer.
Yeah, I mean less...
Krakoa.
I mean less Pirate of the Caribbean and more black sails.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, is actual privateer. Yeah. There's very little difference between privateer and pirate.
Yeah, I'd still call her a pirate, though, especially since part of what she does is versus Krakoan citizens. I mean, there were the pirates out in the Caribbean were pretty much working... They had a home base. They had a place they were fighting for, but they were still pirates because the larger governments didn't recognize them as anything other than pirates.
Yeah, in that case, they would be pirates, but if they have the backing of any nation, which, even though she is kind of a Black Ops kind of operation, she is still working for Krakoa.
That's the thing about Krakoa, though. Outside of the X-Men squads that Cyclops runs, just about everything about it is under the table. And I'm not saying that to sound evil or anything. I'm pretty sure most nations have intelligence gathering and Black Ops sources. They just plain will not acknowledge under any circumstances.
Actually, I like to rescind my comment and say she doesn't work for Krakoa. She works for the Hellfire Trading Company.
Yeah.
East India Trading Company. I'm just saying privateer.
Yeah, they had pirates.
Yes, well, they paid them and they're contracted, so they're technically privateers.
If they're governmental, they're privateers, but they're private, so they're pirates.
I think we're splitting hairs now. Let's move on.
Okay, moving right along.
Well, the third issue is pretty much a flashback issue dealing with the first times that Sebastian Shaw was on Krakoa. He was still trying to find his footing, and this is the moment where we see the Five testing out what they can... Not testing out, they've run their test. Pyro's in a wheelchair, still trying to kind of find his footing. But as a personal favor to Sebastian Shaw, and to keep him more or less in line in Krakoa, one of their first full sanctioned resurrections was of his son, Shinobi Shaw. Now, Shinobi...
That's a terrible name.
It is, and he hasn't been seen since the 90s. He was part of a group called the Upstarts.
Oh,
that explains a lot, actually.
Yeah, he forcefully wrested the Hellfire Club from his father for a significant amount of time. But Shinobi is a mutant. His powers are different from his father's. His father gains more kinetic energy depending on what hits him, and he translates that into muscle strength. Mm-hmm. Shinobi can control his own density.
So you're saying he's dense?
No, I mean he can either add his density and hit harder and take more damage, or he can go or he can go practically intangible.
Gotcha. That explains the team up.
So, Shinobi is long hated his father for reasons that have not been very clear. What a lot of people may not understand, though, is that there was a period where Sebastian confronted his son, tried to get him to stop this weird mission he was on. And Shinobi was so uninterested in listening to him, he killed himself by phasing his own hand into his head and solidifying.
Ew. Oh, that's right. There was a flashback.
Yeah, and you gotta remember that Krakoan resurrection is not absolute. Mutants don't remember everything up to the moment they die, just to the last point they were backed up by the Cerebro system. Mm-hmm. And Shinobi doesn't remember how he died. He's just very sure that he did. Does. Well, like I said, he did that in front of his father. Then his father had to bury him. So, man, Pyro just seems so out of this the entire time.
He might be a little sloshed.
Maybe a bit. But this is before Sebastian knew that Emma Frost had already earmarked the other seat in the Hellfire Trading Company. He had assumed that Shinobi was going to be the Red King he would appoint, which would give Sebastian, more or less full control of the Hellfire Club. He would control 2 votes out of 3. He wasn't expecting the strong-willed woman who was more likely to align with Emma Frost.
Mm-hmm.
But he did take Shinobi through a gate to Central Park, which the U.S. government is now guarding. They claim not to stop an invasion, but just to keep other people away from it. Which could be true.
Yeah.
You know, it is technically foreign soil in the middle of American ground, so I kind of understand where they're coming from there. But this is where we find out about an added problem. Because of the declaration of Krakoa to the world, and Magneto and Xavier both claiming that there's some kind of new version of gods, unfortunately, there are certain humans who heard that message and thought of mutants as literal gods.
Oh boy, those fanatics became cultists, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And apparently there's not just one. There's several versions of it out there, depending on the severity of the line of thought.
Yikes.
So, something else that happened in this issue that's kind of curious is that Shinobi walked away from his father for a little bit in evidently Japan somewhere. And he started to talk to the boss that apparently put him on this path of trying to kill his father to repay some sort of debt. And even though Shinobi's back from the dead, that debt's interest has only accrued in value. So this is not helpful.
I find it odd or strange. I'm not sure what term I'm going to settle on, but there are a lot of offspring of mutants from Japan.
Well, there's more than a few. I mean, we haven't seen Sunfire and Sunpyre yet, but I know they exist. Then there's also Armor. She's Japanese. And so is Surge, I believe.
I was kind of going off the idea of the half Jap. There's
Actually, you just brought up a mutant I'm kind of surprised isn't in the fighting corps of Krakoa. I haven't seen a resurrection of the Silver Samurai.
Oh, true.
I wonder if he has a part in this. But more or less, yeah, this was Shaw trying to set up the world order he thought he was going to have in Krakoa. The only difference, though, is that Shaw did lie to Shinobi and told him that Emma Frost and Kate Pryde are the ones responsible for killing him somehow.
Because Kate can phase.
Well, Shinobi still doesn't know the means of his death. He only knows that his father told him that these people killed him for some strange reason. And Shinobi is... You know what? Shinobi may have led the upstarts for a period, but I never would call him a complicated thinker. He's more of a point A to B type person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question as to how much he believes his father. I mean, the two of them have this acrimonious relationship. I don't know if he's taken him at his word. Now, issue number 4 begins in Brazil with a bunch of young mutants trying to escape to the ocean, hopefully to get to the Marauders that they know are coming. But there's 3 Brazilian destroyers between them and open water. I almost had to laugh, not just when a storm started to whip up and disrupt these boats, but Pyro standing on the deck of the Marauder's ship singing Any Way You Want It at the top of his lungs.
Yes.
Really? That was him singing that?
Yes!
I wasn't sure if it was him singing it or like he's singing along with a radio.
I thought it was some loudspeaker thing like, Hogan's Heroes.
No, he was just singing. And he's using Loki's Dragonfire to hold off one of the boats while Iceman throws up an ice shield between them and the other one. And some kind of... I don't know if this is a Brazilian mutant or a post-human, but something called the Paragon drops between the kids and the water. And he seems really eager to fight Storm when she shows up to just declare that these are Krakoan mutants and they can't stop them.
I don't think he understands what he's getting himself into.
Well, I think he had that classic, weird 1980s mentality of, I dare you to a fist fight, come fight me. Whereas Storm just looked at it and said, I can throw lightning bolts, right? Why would I fight you?
Try me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she flared up her powers. Paragon was hit by a lightning bolt that caused him to bleed from the mouth. He looks disheveled, but he's okay. And he's screaming, is that the best you can do? No, that was the leader. The main bolt is still charging in the cloud, and that's when his hair starts to frizz out, and he has that realization of, oh no.
Yeah. Crater.
Yeah. Yeah, Pyro really enjoyed the display.
That
Yeah.
should have been. He should have been surrounded by glass.
Yeah. The Marauders boat is even more impressive that it has its own ready-made Krakoan gate sitting on it.
Nifty.
Well, that means anybody they rescue is instantly transported to the island. They don't have to ferry people back and forth. They are the door.
That's a time saver.
Yeah. Except the surprise was Pride wasn't on the boat. Pride was still in Taipei with Bishop trying to understand what happened to that Taipei billionaire who disappeared supposedly at the Krakoan gate.
Mm-hmm.
And she is trying to annoy Bishop into becoming the Red Bishop of the Hellfire Trading Company. And she tried everything. You look good in red? No. But your name's already Bishop? No. Well, you wouldn't have to deal with Shaw? Well, no. But I do like I do like Pride's idea to get into the skyscraper where this billionaire supposedly lived. She tandem parachute jumps with Bishop, claiming that I'd love the dialogue. So, what did you and Logan infiltrate when you did this? You misunderstood. I told Logan I could do this, but he said it was crazy. What? We're gonna die. If you want to be the Red Bishop, you're gonna need to work on a more positive attitude.
I think she's still drunk.
I'm pretty
Just
sure,
a
yeah.
bit.
Yeah. But even though there were guards on the roof, it was a technically silent approach. They pulled the ripcord, they floated down. Pride's powers did manage to phase them both through, except it left most of the parachute on top of the roof still.
They don't care. Collateral damage.
Yeah, but Pride is still feeling oddly vindictive with her stuff, like when she found an actual ivory tusk in this place. It's gaudy, it's stupid, yes, but she just kind of grabbed it, facing the wall, and said, "Oops, I dropped it." She is acting just so bizarre. And it's not even like Krakoan bizarre, she's just drunk. But they do find a void in the structure of this place, and when they phase through the wall, there is another room within the void, and they phase through that, and there's the billionaire, just kind of sitting on a cot bed. He's in a cell, more or less, in the middle of this place.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so excited to see both Bishop and Shadowcat. He recognizes them immediately, and he's been praying that mutants would come to rescue them. And if they're going to take him to Krakoa, not because he's mutant, but because, unfortunately, as we saw in the last issue, he's one of the mutant cultists.
Of course.
He believes in them as gods. They are his people. They can do no wrong.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the guards have finally tracked down where Bishop and Shadowcat went, and the two guards here are pretty much like two very weak versions of Lady Deathstrike. Cybernetic arms with long claws. And
all the tech, not the skills.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, if they had training, they may have been a problem. But compared to Bishop and Shadowcat, they're rookies.
Mm-hmm.
Except the one that managed to punch Shadowcat in the face, and she starts complaining that her nose was almost healed.
So close.
Yeah, I never thought a pillow could be so dangerous.
Yeah,
that was creative.
Yeah, she hit one of the Deathstrike lights with a pillow to disrupt it, then phased the pillow through her arm and part of her cheek and solidified it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's brutally crazy, and that would take so much surgery and damage to undo. Mm-hmm. And again, I grant you, they were trying to kill them, but you're trying to be better than that, I thought. So.
Well, her judgment's a bit impaired, I believe.
Yeah. Except when they drag this billionaire out and then they present her to his wife, who's still in the middle of an anti-mutant rally, still claiming that this guy died because he touched a Krakoan gate and he wasn't a mutant. That was amazing.
Like, actually, he was in your own home.
Yeah.
Being held prisoner. FYI.
It was a really it was a TV-worthy moment though when she's standing there in Taipei Arena, her face on the screen, standing in front of a podium. They have not even commented on where my husband is. I demand answers. Found him. What? Hey, I found this in your house.
Hi, honey.
He is going to get so yelled at when they get home. But, yeah, Pride confronts the woman, doesn't touch her, nothing cruel happens, but she obviously lost the crowd. They start booing. And it's still like the dialogue. Well, we made our point. Time to bounce. Copy that, Red Bishop. Please. No. But, Mrs. Zhao there made an immediate trip to Madripoor to seek justice, as she put it, and she wants to buy her way into a new group. Now, if you don't know the kids around the table, I wouldn't be surprised.
Good. I was questioning their age.
Okay, they were shortly in charge of the Hellfire Club. They were pretty much Hellfire Club 2.0. They are all humans of one sort or another, but they have a big anti-mutant agenda. They're currently calling themselves Hominis Vrendi, which I believe means humans first.
No,
humans come first.
Humans come first, okay.
I thought the loose translation I came across was like fewer humans or fewer people or something like that.
Mm.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't remember most of their names, but they are well-to-do. They are rich. The girl among them is practically psychotic. She just revels in causing pain and destruction.
You can see that in her face.
Yeah, the only one I really recognize is I believe it's the Black Bishop over there, the blonde kid with the green goggles.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him. He's a direct descendant of a famous scientist. What was his name? Victor Frankenstein.
Really?
What?
Yes. He's a direct descendant of Frankenstein.
Nice.
So the fifth issue and the last one we have for review here, I do like that the X-Men have a bit more of a global mission when they use Iceman's powers to try and replenish the sea ice down in Antarctica.
That's clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see Christian Frost on his feet. He wasn't doing so well last time we saw him when Emma Frost rescued him. Although Kate is still acting very cavalier. However, she and Emma seem to agree a lot on the issues. They are consistently downvoting Shaw's ideas and just plain outpowering him on the Council of Three there.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that they had 2 votes that didn't go Shaw's way, so he got up and walked away from the table, and that leaves his son staring at him just going, "Ooh, I thought I drove my father nuts."
Yeah, I can't hold a candle to them.
Yeah. But we talked about this before, the odd conversation between Shadowcat and Emma Frost here, which really solidified the deep-seated respect that these two have for each other. It's kind of profound. Especially considering how long in their history they've tried to hurt each other in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be emotionally or physically. Did anyone else catch the piratical vibe of Kate's quarters there?
Yes.
In the Red Keep?
How can you not?
I'm still worried about her. She is dipping so far into this role, I am seriously concerned. But Pride herself and several other mutants appear to be hanging out deep within the Red Keep, which includes Pixie. I'm kind of glad to see her back in stories. Although she's still not featured in anything. But unfortunately for the Marauders, one of the boats, where was it, was being attacked.
Taipei?
Madripoor Bay.
Yeah, Madripoor. Yeah, that's the upstart.
Yeah, which is Shinobi's boat.
Yes.
So most of the Marauders head straight there via Krakoan Gate, while Iceman, Pyro, and Shadowcat go for their own ship. Thankfully, Madripoor wouldn't technically be far from Krakoa's Pacific location. No, Atlantic location. No, it is the Pacific. I'm sorry. Madripoor is a fictional, practically lawless island in the Pacific's rim area.
Mm.
But there's several militias running around, and apparently they are attacking the upstart directly. Storm and Bishop are there to respond. But before they get too far, they do find a bunch of mutants in the hold. Although there's a bunch of the guys in Russian power armor, similar to the very first issue, that disrupts powers that attack them. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, Storm without her powers changes a lot, except I think a lot of people forget how long of a period Storm spent with 0 powers.
Yeah, no, she is dangerous without her powers.
Yeah, she's a street fighter. And then there's Bishop without his powers. What changes?
He's still got a gun.
No, he's still Bishop. I mean,
Yeah.
there's very few.
He has multiple guns.
Yeah.
And his fists.
I mean, you take away Bishop's powers, I'm pretty sure his first response is, well, I was going to shoot you anyway. But this attack was being orchestrated by Hominus Verendi, who's trying to take their first shot at the Marauders. So while Storm and Bishop are tied up in Madripoor Bay, somebody tries to ram Pride's boat with another large boat. Thankfully, her powers manage to phase the attacking, or the, I guess you'd say, ramming ship completely through them. Except this is the point where they're attacked by 2 people from that boat. Now, if you don't recognize either of them, I don't blame you. They are not big characters in current Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm.
But they are very dangerous for what they are. The first one there is the armor of the Executioner. Now, I know, lame name. Except the Executioner has a whole bunch of alien gear, and in his various iterations, the mission of the Executioner is to murder mutants.
Mm-hmm.
Usually been a human with a lot of armor. The other one back there is called the Hate Monger, the guy with the giant yellow H on his chest and the flaming sword.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That's where it gets a little more complicated, because the Hate Monger, originally in Marvel Comics, was a clone of Adolf Hitler.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not to say that either of these characters are the original Hate Monger or Executioner. But you're talking about 2 guys with enhanced suits whose entire mission right now is to kill things that are different, aka mutants. And judging from what the Executioner yells, both of them are working for Hominus Verendi. Again, it's 2 guys versus 3, and one of those guys is Iceman, the other one is Pyro and Shadowcat. However, if they're at all prepared, this could be very bad, and if there's one thing we're sure about, Hominus Verendi has done its homework. They know what they're dealing with.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So this leaves it all in a very peculiar spot. But I gotta admit, when I read the first issue, I fell in love with it. Then because of the severe amount of things I have to do in my day, I scanned a few issues in between. But sitting down and rereading it, this is a surprisingly solid story overall. Personally, I think there's a lot of character growth happening in a very short amount of time here.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop is not as stiff as he used to be in other comics. Iceman is not quite as flippant as he used to be. Storm is still a very well-balanced character, but she's been built for years. And this series has brought out an edge in Shadowcat I didn't think was possible, but at the same time feels very organic. This change isn't as shocking as most of what's happened in, like, Dawn of X.
Yeah, definitely.
As well as she's suffered enough trauma recently that you understand why she's doing what she's doing. There's very salient reasons for it, even if they're not being said. You just have to put a little thought into it. What are you guys' opinions on this?
I've loved this series from page 1, or maybe page 2 when Kate broke her nose. But
we're gonna talk about your feelings about women pretty soon here, dude.
No, I've loved this series from the first time when we read all the issue 1s for another show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm continuing reading through. I'm still loving it, especially the team up against Shaw, because that he's a man that deserves every bit of that.
He is, except he's not pinned down yet. There's too many moves he can make. I mean,
true, but
while they're dealing with Shaw individually, he does have an entire third of the Hellfire Trading Company at his disposal.
Mm-hmm.
True, but it's just I just love them turning the screws on him and every chance they can get.
Yeah, well, obviously some of that is personal. I mean, Shaw was one of the people responsible for trying to recruit Pride when she was a kid, and then Emma was the one who kept, jacking with Pride's life throughout her entire period, more or less, even as an X-Man. Except, if there's one person that she would like to mess with more than Pride, it's Shaw.
Mm-hmm. But overall, I've been liking the interactions of just overall the members of the crew. I mean, between I'm especially kind of attached to Kate and Pyro at the moment right now, but they seem to be the most damaged, as you said before.
Yeah, I do hope there is some kind of spotlight issue on Pyro down the line, because I'd really like to dig into his psyche and find out what's going on in there.
But I hope in the future, when things start to settle down with the characters, that they kind of address their destructive habits.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Joanna, what do you think of it all?
I liked it. It was fun. I liked it from issue 1. I wanted to read it more of the series after that. Mm-hmm. It did not disappoint. Just Kate coming into her own and just owning the Queen of the Ocean kind of vibe.
Isn't it kind of amazing though that after everything she's been, a student, an X-Man, a new mutant, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., a trained ninja, Wolverine's sidekick, a teacher, a principal, and a team leader, it takes her being drunk and a pirate before it seems like she's actually gone anywhere.
Wasn't she a Guardian of the Galaxy at one point, too?
Yeah, she led them for a little while. You are absolutely right, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I forgot.
Yeah, she was Star Lady. He is right.
I forgot about that.
Admittedly, I hesitate whenever I call her by name, because I've always been so accustomed to calling her Kitty, because that's what she's been gone by for so long.
Yeah.
Right. It feels weird calling her Kate, but she's insisting on it, so I'll follow it too.
Yes.
You know, that could be a good thing, except you remember that Kate Pryde was one of the characters that died early on as a result of the Days of Futures Past storyline, her future self. I know. I just bent the whole timeline thing. Never mind. I'm sorry.
Go back to your corner.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go all Jeremy Bearimy on this. So, please, continue.
Yes. So, I like the banter a lot, especially the Marauder, their individual group on the ship, and their various tasks and missions. I'm a huge Storm fan, so I love seeing more of her in it. And correct me if I'm wrong, is she back with Bishop, or is she just working with him?
They're just working together. I don't think Storm is an item with anybody right now.
Okay.
Well, wait, she's still... Last I well, let me back up. Pre-Dawn of X, I know she was still flirting a lot with T'Challa.
She was married to T'Challa.
Yeah, but he annulled that.
Yeah.
That's his right as king. But the two of them were getting back together in this post-AVX world, but that was before the Dawn of X happened, and I don't know how the Rise of Krakoa has affected their relationship.
I still have mixed feelings about her and T'Challa. I think they were a good match originally, but somebody posed a question that I will never be able to get out of my head. If they had kids, would they be called the Thundercats?
Boo!
No, I think she was called Chimera.
I know, but Storm. Black Panther, let me have this, dang it!
I know, but we saw one of her kids.
Thundercat.
No, she was hanging out with a panther. I can't remember what her mutant ability was now that I think about it.
Thundercat. You can't convince me otherwise.
You're trying a bit too hard there. I'd believe it more if Storm and Thor had a child. That would be a Thundercat.
But there would be no cat to the cat. It'd be just Thunderchild.
At least it would be thunder instead of lightning.
Well, there's one, there's another. Pyro even said, where there's smoke, there's fire. She's like, I see smoke.
Yeah, well, something tells me Pyro sees fire everywhere.
He makes fire everywhere if he doesn't see it. Anyway. I'm done for the night. Go ahead.
Okay. No, this was a lot of fun. This is something I could see putting on a shelf. You know, I would gladly collect like either the issues or the collected versions and just see how the story develops, because it seems like no matter what direction Krakoa goes, the Marauders are a necessary function of it. Which is kind of unusual considering how many teams this island has. But there's no reason for the Marauders' mission to end as long as there are countries who won't allow mutants to just freely move to Krakoa. So, I'm interested to see how their story develops. I'm interested to see what kind of gambit Shaw eventually employs to try and take rulership of the Hellfire Trading Company. He's going to try, it's just a matter of when. And I'm not sure Ominous Verendi is going to stay as a primary villain of the Marauders, but it's a good start for him at least. There's got to be something else out there that's better. It's a better challenge overall. But you guys got anything to add?
Nope.
I think that's a good addition to the library.
Honestly,
Huh.
if they made a sideshow collectible out of Cape Pride and as a Red Queen, I would get it.
Same.
Well, send an email. They're always looking for suggestions.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
Speaking of suggestions, do you guys have anything that you would like to read upcoming?
Nothing off the top of my head.
I always think of something during the week and then I forget it when you ask me.
Well, we can always go with your suggestion from last week and check out like a few issues of the Female Furies miniseries from DC.
Yes, because Barda is awesome.
Yeah, the current miniseries I'm looking at, I still don't see them ending until at least the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, beyond that, the only suggestion I had was trying to dig up copies of a recent Titan Comics series that was supposed to be a new version of Robotech.
Huh.
A new timeline of Robotech, more or less. I don't know much beyond that. I didn't think it was possible, but there it is. So, Female Furies next week?
Sure.
Awesome. All right, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and pretty soon we're going to come out with another episode of the Experts podcast as well, where we talk about Bishop, talk about synergy, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we will see you soon. Thank you again. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I'm Jesse.
The Cosmic Library is now closed.